And the FA are in talks with Thomas Tuchel over becoming the next England manager. As you can see, senior reporter Rob Dorsett has joined me now. So, Rob, just talk us through this story and why the FA want Tuchel.
OK, well, look, my understanding is that they're in detailed discussions with Thomas Tuchel's representatives right now. And the German coach is in pole position to potentially become the next men's England manager. He's been out of work since May, of course, when he left Bayern Munich. And we reported this story 2 weeks ago, saying that Tuchel, along with 3 other big-name managers who we thought were on the FA shortlist, in Graham Potter, Eddie Howe and Jurgen Klopp, had not been approached. Other than an initial inquiry, there wasn't any detailed discussion with any of those 4 candidates as of a couple of weeks ago. So what's changed? Well, I think the FA have accelerated their search for a successor to Gareth Southgate because it's become clear in this international break, and maybe in the last one as well, that Lee Carsley isn't going to have a longevity in that interim role that he's got right now. He's an outstanding coach. The FA know that. He understands the FA DNA. He understands the pathway and bringing young players through. The players like him. All of that was great. But the test was always going to be how he coped with the media. And I think Lee Carsley himself would admit that's not his strongest area. And he has struggled a bit in that area in this latest international break. And, of course, England lost 2-1 to Greece and could have lost more heavily. So I think that's focused the minds of the bosses at the FA. And that's why they've accelerated their plans to a large extent. And whilst the chief executive of the FA, Mark Bullingham, I think always wanted, ideally, a homegrown coach to take on the role of men's manager because coach development is a really important part of the FA. John McDermott, who's the FA's technical director, was focused on winning. He wanted somebody with a track record of winning major trophies. And Thomas Tuchel fits that bill, doesn't he? You have to say. If you look at this graphic we can show you now with exactly what he's won in his times at Paris Saint-Germain and at Bayern Munich and at Chelsea. The Champions League, the FIFA Club World Cup, the UEFA Super Cup, all of those top 3 all with Chelsea. Bundesliga with Bayern Munich, the German Cup again with them. Ligue 1 and the French Cup with Paris Saint-Germain. That domestic won a Ligue 1 twice. He knows how to win silverware and has a tremendous record, particularly in cup competitions, which is, of course, where we get to in the business end of major tournaments. And John McDermott thinks he will be judged ultimately on whether England can win a major trophy in the men's game while he's in charge as the FA's technical director. So in-depth talks between Tuchel's representatives and the FA bosses. It's not a done deal by any means at this stage. I think we need to stress that. But it could progress pretty quickly from here if both sides have some sort of accord.
And we know that there have been a few other names linked as well. Pep Guardiola, there was reports yesterday about him being sounded out for the job. Does that mean that he is now out of the mix? Look,
we can't say that categorically, but yes, I think you have to say it's looking very, very unlikely that Pep Guardiola, pictured here meeting Thomas Tuchel when he was Chelsea manager, of course, I think it's very unlikely that Pep is going to be the next England manager. Let me tell you what my understanding of this is. There was an initial inquiry to Pep Guardiola's people, but that was back in July, in the days after that Gareth Southgate had announced his resignation. It wasn't really followed up, as I understand. Pep didn't give a very glowing, sort of positive response to say he wanted to have talks. And I think the FA have moved on in that. In many ways, Pep Guardiola is the dream ticket as far as the FA bosses are concerned. But did he want the job? I don't think he showed them any reason to be positive that he might want the job. And so the FA have to get an England manager in place, and they've moved on. And we should stress that the man on your screen now, Pep Guardiola, already has a job, and a very good job, at Manchester City, where he's had a glittering campaign. He's proved himself to be the best manager of his generation. And it's far from clear what he's going to do. Is he going to extend that contract at the Etihad? He may well do so. So I don't think the FA could sit around and wait for Pep Guardiola to potentially be available. They've decided they've got to move a little bit more quickly than that. But I think it's now looking pretty clear that unless something seismic happens in the next few days, Pep Guardiola will not be the next England manager.
And Rob, how key is that? You mentioned there Pep Guardiola has a job. Is Tuchel a bit easier for the FA because he is out of work?
Yeah, I think to a large extent that's absolutely the case. But look, I've had to look into this a little bit because my understanding was Tuchel was put on gardening leave in May when he left his role as Bayern Munich manager. And in the initial stages, I think Bayern Munich would have been due some compensation if he'd taken another job quickly. But it looks like that period has lapsed. I've been talking to Florian Plettenberg, who's one of my colleagues out at Sky Germany, who knows Bayern Munich and Tuchel very, very well. He tells me his contract ran with Bayern Munich up until June the 30th, 2025, so next June. But there was an agreement between Tuchel and Bayern in February that said, look, if another club or another country comes in for you, you can leave as if you were a free agent. We won't demand a transfer fee for you. So as long as that holds, that agreement, it seems as though the FA won't have to pay any compensation for Thomas Tuchel. But I say it should be fairly straightforward. There's the issue of wages. And again, Plettenberg has told me that Thomas Tuchel was earning around €9 million a year at Bayern Munich, plus bonuses. Now, if you put that into context, Gareth Southgate, as England manager, even under his new contract, was on about half of that. So I think it's pretty clear that if Thomas Tuchel wants to be the next England manager, he's going to have to take a whacking great pay cut to do so. But I don't think that's a problem. Every candidate that goes for the England job or is interested in it knows that the FA can't compete with the biggest clubs in Europe when it comes to salaries for manager. But they know it's a very, very prestigious role, one that a lot of people aspire to, as the biggest job in English football, one of the biggest jobs in world football, if you're a coach. It's that high profile. And so I don't think Thomas Tuchel will be too concerned about the fact he's not going to make as much money from the job if he takes the role.
So, Rob, what is the timeline looking like now? What kind of timescale are we talking about?
Well, as I say, if we accept that Tuchel is the FA's primary choice, it could happen pretty quickly from here. But again, that depends on what's happening behind closed doors and the negotiations between his representatives and the FA bosses. There's a lot more detail to be discussed, as I understand it, about his contract. And look, deals for Thomas Tuchel in the past with various clubs have fallen through. So it's not a done deal. It's not a definite that this is going to happen. There could yet be stumbling blocks. But I think if there is a chord on both sides, it could happen pretty quickly. And I think there's a really strong chance that Thomas Tuchel might be in charge of England by the time we get to next month's Nations League matches, for example. So he'd be able to have a couple of games in charge of the England team before we get to Christmas, and crucially before the World Cup qualifiers start in March. So no rush from the FA's perspective, but certainly they'd like to try and get it done to put all of this speculation and doubt to bed. And if Tuchel does become the next England manager, he'll only be the third non-English man to do it. Of course, the two predecessors, Sven-Göran Eriksson and Fabio Capello. Could Thomas Tuchel be the next England manager?
Yeah, Rob, just before you go, we are running a poll over on our app. We're asking people to vote whether Tuchel is the right man to be brought in as England manager. It's been up for about half an hour. This is interesting. We've had 3,500 votes. You can see it there. Yes, 48%. No, 52%. Do you think that's a bit of an indication that Tuchel will have a little bit of work to do to win over some of the fans?
Well, he will, because of what I've just said there. He's a non-English England manager if he gets the job. And we need to stress, if he gets the job, because it's not a done deal. But yeah, look, he's going to take some winning over, because England fans, to a large extent, are very, very patriotic, and they would rather have an Englishman in charge of the England team, or an English woman. In fact, the chief executive of the FA would like that himself. But it's not looking practical right now, and Thomas Tuchel is the lead man. Yes, he's got to win over some hearts and minds, absolutely. But the FA and John McDermott think that he's the man who can deliver a major trophy for England, something we haven't had since 1966. So I tell you what, if Thomas Tuchel can deliver that, nobody will give a monkeys what nationality he is.